So I got the new M3 iMac. It's a massive throwback for me. My very first Mac was in fact the 2009 iMac, but then I switched to MacBooks and I haven't really bought an iMac until, well, right now actually, and I'll tell you why the M3 iMac got me excited again about Apple's only all-in-one computer. Let's ramble.
Hold up, face go wild when I pull up. They all on me like they want some.
Hey, what is up guys? It's great to see you all again, and if you're new here, I'm Patrick and this is where I ramble about tech and other stuff. So like I said in the intro, my first Mac was a late 2009 27-inch iMac. I'd been curious about Macs for a while then, but they were still far from mainstream and most offices used PCs exclusively. I had used nothing but PCs all my life as well, but when I finally did take the plunge and I invested in that iMac, and after the initial day or so of getting used to the different operating system, a new world opened up to me and I haven't looked back since. I remember getting some really weird looks around the office because the average PC screen was about 18.5 inches back then, and I had this massive 27-inch behemoth sitting on my desk. But I didn't really care. I thought it was an absolute treat to work with, and until this day, I have not regretted that switch to Apple for a second. I do use PCs for gaming for obvious reasons, but for my work, I'm all in on Apple. Macs are basically problem-free, and since Apple introduced their own silicon chips, there's just no competition. I did switch over to MacBooks after the iMac gave me that first taste of the Apple, and I've been using MacBooks ever since. I've also purchased some of the Mac Mini models, which I think are great little computers for very specific use cases, but I haven't really been interested in iMacs until Apple announced that the iMac lineup would also receive the new M3 chip, and after seeing the Apple event and listening to what that chip is capable of, for some reason I got really curious about iMacs again and how powerful they've become. Anyway, enough talk, let's have a quick look at what's in the box, and then I'll explain to you why I chose this particular configuration and what use case I have in mind for the M3 iMac. I do always love the unboxing experience of these things. I mean, as a tech channel, I unbox a lot of things, but I don't think anyone does a better job than Apple when it comes to unboxings. I love how the packaging is designed around the iMac and how the actual peripherals have a little unboxing of their own. Now, removing that wax paper and then peeling off that first screen protector has got to be the best part of it. I mean, if you're a tech head, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I really like how the accessories are color coordinated with the yellow of the actual iMac all the way down to the Magic Mouse. Now, with that said, I'm not a fan of the Magic Mouse. I don't think it's very ergonomic at all, and while it is supposed to feel intuitive with the swiping and the right clicks that aren't really right clicks, I can't get used to it, not to mention that Apple still hasn't addressed the ridiculous way this mouse is charged. I mean, it's bad enough that we're still stuck with lightning ports on this new 2023 iMac, but the fact that the charging process literally turns this thing into a dead mouse seals the deal for me. So this will be the one thing I will replace ASAP, probably with the Logitech MX Master 3S, which is hands down the best mouse for both productivity and video editing. Everything else is great. I love the Magic Keyboard, and I think this yellowish gold color looks fantastic, especially with the white keys. I will add a Magic Trackpad though, since I use one in all of my setups. To me, a good mouse in my right hand and a Magic Trackpad on my left is the ultimate productivity hack. I also appreciate the cable, which unlike the one on my studio display is removable. It has 4 USB-C ports, 2 of which are Thunderbolt ports. I wish all 4 of them would be, but hey, it's better than the single Thunderbolt port on my studio display. Man, I gotta say, I really love this design, especially this yellow color. Now, I know the design isn't new, nor is the color, but it's new to me and I'm digging it. Now, what got me drawn to that first iMac in 2009 was the all-in-one nature of it, and that is exactly what attracted me to it now. I really appreciate clean and minimal setups, and it doesn't get more minimal than the iMac. Here's this beautiful looking screen that has the entire computer built into it, and because of Apple Silicon, and especially this M3 chip, the all-in-one nature of it does not mean we have to compromise in terms of power. You see, to me, the iMac is a home computer. You know, a family machine that everyone can use. It's super easy to set up, and because it has such a small footprint, it looks fantastic in pretty much any kind of interior. And that's what makes these machines ideal to keep in the kitchen or the living room for everybody to use. And that is essentially what I had in mind for this machine. My MacBook Pro is and will remain my workhorse. I ordered a fully spec'd out M3 Max MacBook Pro since that is the machine I use to run my businesses. It's the one that goes with me wherever I travel, and it is the one that lives on my desk hooked up to my studio display the rest of the time. And because I tend to max out my MacBooks, I don't and didn't feel the need to max out the iMac. It is not intended to be my #1 workhorse. So I was happy to save some money by choosing the mid-tier option. This is the 8-core CPU, 10-core GPU model with 16 gigabytes of unified memory and 1 terabyte of internal storage. I personally would not recommend investing into a computer with 8 gigabytes of unified memory. It is almost 2024, and that to me just doesn't cut it anymore. Nor is it future-proof. But I also felt I didn't really need the 24 gigs for the reasons I just mentioned. So I went for the 16 gigabytes middle ground, which felt like the sweet spot. I feel the same way about storage as I do about unified memory, meaning that 256 gigs just isn't enough. It is barely enough for an iPhone, let alone a computer, especially if it's used by the entire family. Files, apps, and games are getting bigger and bigger, and 256 gigs fill up real fast. Now, upgrading from 512 gigs to 1 terabyte is only $200 extra, and I do believe it is worth it, especially considering how fast the SSD storage is on these Macs. And that brings the grand total of this particular configuration to just over $2,000. Now, the idea was to do some initial testing on this iMac, use it for a few weeks, do a full review of it, and then move it to the house as a family unit. But while I was testing it, I was really surprised by the performance of this thing. I mean, it's a well-known fact that Apple computers are not built for gaming. But Apple has been hinting at the fact that these machines are actually becoming more and more capable by adding things like ray tracing to the new Macs. So I downloaded one of the few nicer games that are available for Mac right now, in this case Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and it looks and feels really smooth. I mean, it is obviously no match to this absolute beast of a gaming machine I built recently with that beefy RTX 4090 in there, but remember, this is a mid-range family Mac and it's handling things remarkably well. And I actually can't wait for more games to arrive to the Mac to see how well it will run those. Now, the reason why I tend to spec out my MacBook is the fact that video editing is an important part of my daily workflow. I shoot in 4K, which in practice is more like downsampled 8K. I like to use multiple camera angles, and I often stack several plugins in my timeline. That requires a lot of processing power, and so I make sure I always have enough headroom for when things get really heavy. But just to see what happened, I decided to copy a project from my current maxed out M1 Max MacBook Pro onto an external SSD drive and see how the iMac handles it. And to my surprise, it scrubs through the timeline without any hiccups or stuttering. Now, this may not be the heaviest timeline I ever produced, but for what is essentially a mid-tier Mac, I'm super impressed, and I can't wait to do some more testing to see how far I can push this thing. And to be completely honest with you, I'm low-key regretting not spending the extra cash on the 24 gigs simply because I'm already so impressed with what I get out of this configuration. Now, of course, it is way too early to come to a verdict on this computer, and certainly not everything is perfect. The camera, for instance, is still garbage, but I do happen to have a great solution for that as well, which I will also be dropping on the channel this week. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, a sub to the channel would be much appreciated. Anyway, I'm genuinely excited to use the M3 iMac more, really push it over the next few weeks, and then get back to you with my full review. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it one of these. It really does go a long way. And stay tuned for some links to videos you might also want to watch.